Okay, I think we can get started. And if anybody else joins us, as soon as I say that, always there's somebody else that comes in. But this is being recorded, and the recording will be posted and shared with all of you, and we'll get to the details on that. Oh, we've got more international participants as well. Welcome, Rosina. Welcome everybody who is joining us today live, and hello to those of you that are watching the recording. Our topic for today's session is designing learning experiences for metacognitive reflection. If you can see my slide, you're all set. Please use the chat to ask any questions or provide any comments. I always love hearing from our participants, and it's great to be able to connect with educators from around the globe. And let's get started. So to introduce myself, hello, I am Caitlin McLemore. I am joining you from Tampa, Florida in the US. And I am an instructor with EdTech Teacher, and we are a partner with the VILS Digital Promise program. And I'm so excited to share with you all today about metacognitive reflection. Before I was an instructor with EdTech Teacher, I was an educational technology coach in K-12 independent schools in both the Tampa Bay area and also the Nashville area as well. So working with students and teachers to integrate technology into the classroom in meaningful and transformative ways. And I'd like to turn it over to Sherry, who is going to be my moderator for today. Thank you, Sherry.
Thank you, and welcome everyone. My name is Sherry Lofton. I'm an instructional technology trainer here with the VILS program and Digital Promise. And before I came to Digital Promise, I was a teacher and a coach and did a little admin as well. So I'm so excited. I was big into project-based learning and infusing tech into our learning experiences. So thank you and welcome, and I hope you enjoy your time here today.
Thanks, Sherry. Okay, let's go on just a few norms for today. There will be some opportunities for you to unmute your mic to speak if you feel comfortable doing so. If not, I do encourage you to use the chat for comments and questions. I know in our last week's session, we had some great participation in the chat, and I ask you all to be as mindful and present as possible, and think about, as you participate in this session, I really want you to think about being comfortable in sharing your own experiences and connecting what you're learning with what you and your students do and what you and your students need. So make sure to tie the information that you're learning today into your unique learning context and situation, and think about how do you see yourself using the things that we talk about today and how might they benefit your students. So we all have our own unique contexts and settings, and I definitely believe in personalization, and so just wanted to keep that in mind as we move forward. So on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being least and 5 being most, I'd like to get a poll of the current level of student reflection in your classroom. And if you are looking to increase student reflection, add a plus sign to your number. So just to check in to see where everybody is. So we've got some 3s coming in. 3s and 4s. Five with a plus. I like that attitude of constantly wanting to stretch. Yes, I would imagine that there's a lot of plus signs in that you're attending this session today, and so you're interested in learning about new strategies for reflection. So thank you all for your eagerness to participate and your willingness to grow and to stretch and to find new ways to meet your learners' needs. So our objectives for today are to have you all learn and understand the value of including metacognitive reflection in the classroom experience. Many of you already understand this value in looking at the numbers that you shared, and thinking about, yes, the 5+ attitude. We always have room to grow and improve our practice. So hopefully you'll learn some strategies and tips and new strategies and tips today, or new ways of thinking about reflection in your classroom. And learners will understand how to integrate metacognitive reflection into their existing classroom practice. So a lot of you already have experience with student reflection and metacognitive reflection, but just to ground our conversation and to center our session around a shared understanding of metacognitive reflection. Metacognitive reflection, when we talk about that, it's the process of helping students to develop the skills and habits of mind to understand how they think, feel, and act, and to deeply and truly understand their own learning experience and their own learning processes. So it helps students to become self-aware, and it helps them to self-reflect, and it helps them to have a better and deeper understanding of their learning process and how they learn and what they know, think, feel, and understand. If we look at the research around metacognitive reflection, reflection is a continuous process, and it involves learners considering their own learning experience and their own life experiences. So it really connects the learner to what it is they're doing. It really makes them aware of their experience. And the benefits of metacognitive reflection in thinking about learner outcomes. Metacognitive reflection has shown to improve teaching and learning practices, to help students make deeper connections to content, and has improved learners' critical thinking and problem solving skills. Metacognitive reflection should include opportunities for both individual and peer reflection. So self-awareness and self-reflection, and then also opportunities to learn from and with peers. And it should be an active experience. It should connect past knowledge with current learning experiences, thinking about that scaffolding of instruction, and thinking about that growth mindset, as Sherry mentioned too in the chat, and really thinking about where am I and where can I go, right? And it's all about processing, synthesizing, evaluating, and applying new concepts. The point of metacognitive reflection is really to understand the purpose and processes of including reflective practice, reflective thinking, and metacognitive tasks in the classroom, and to think about ways to be fully engaged in the learning process. So students are actively making meaning, they're actively making connections between prior and current knowledge, and they're really developing their own thinking. So what's the teacher doing in a metacognitive reflection, experience? The teacher is providing the structure, language, and experience that provides students the opportunity to reflect. So if we just tell students you need to reflect on their learning, they might not know what that means or how to do that. So teachers can really serve as a model for how do we actually think about our thinking, or how do we actually think about our learning. And the teacher also serves as a guide to emphasize the purpose of reflection, to one of a growth mindset, or one of thinking about thinking and thinking about our understanding. So rather than the typical experience of I learn information, I retain it, I recall it, and then I'm done, it's really thinking about that deeper understanding of content and of the learning experience. The teacher can also provide structured and clear thinking routines to help practice and develop those metacognitive muscles, if you will, and coach students through the process of engaging with thinking routines. So again, students aren't just automatically going to know how to self-reflect or know how to be metacognitive, and teachers really need to help coach students through that process, provide them deliberate opportunities to experience and do that, and engage with metacognitive reflection, and then also model that metacognitive reflection as well. So the student is engaging in the reflective process by engaging in those structured thinking routines. So being a full engaged and active participant, and thinking, being open to new reflective habits of mind, and being open to a shift in thinking instead of just doing, the checking the box, really growing and stretching and thinking about thinking. And then the student is also engaging with the learning experience itself and verbalizing or communicating their metacognitive reflection. So articulating their shifts in understanding, or articulating where they might have challenges, and verbalizing. I say verbalizing, but it might be audio or written, where there might be different visuals that students are engaging in, but they're communicating what they're going through when they're doing their thinking routines. So how can technology facilitate metacognitive reflection? There's a variety of different tools that can be used, and we'll look at some examples later on in the session. But when we think about technology for metacognitive reflection, audio recordings or programs that allow audio recordings can help to capture thinking and reflection. So maybe students aren't able to articulate in written form what they're thinking, but they're able to speak out loud as though, as to themselves, or as though they're speaking to a peer, or as though they're speaking to someone else. So that audio recording is a way to capture thinking. And then digital portfolios can incorporate a variety of multimedia and learning artifacts to capture the learning journey from beginning to end. Ebooks are another option. If we think about tools like Book Creator or Google Slides or Microsoft PowerPoint or Sway, those are some digital ways to present information and link learning artifacts from a variety of different mediums. And then screencasts are another way, or recordings of what's happening on the screen with or without a voiceover. Screencasts are a way to explain and model routines and thinking and reflection, and really gain deeper insight into those thinking processes. And then also videos as well. I'm thinking about recording webcam or video demonstrations kind of within a program. So what I'd like to do now is share briefly about the Project Zero's Thinking Routine Toolbox. So as I said, when I was going through what do teachers do, what do students do, it's helpful for teachers to provide concrete thinking routines or strategies for thinking about thinking or thinking about learning. So Project Zero has a thinking routines toolbox that they've developed through a variety of research-based projects. And these are ways to scaffold and support student thinking or student metacognitive reflection. So what I'd like to do now is have you all explore some of these thinking routines. We're going to engage in a few examples throughout this session, but I do want to see what you all find most interesting or what might be most useful to you, because we have a variety of participants today. So I'm going to put on a 5-minute timer, and I'd like for you all to take 5 minutes to explore Project Zero's thinking routines and just look around and see which ones you like, and just explore. Are there any questions before we go explore? I'll be here, but I'll set that timer and then we'll have an activity to kind of reflect and discuss. Okay. Hopefully you all found some thinking routines that would be useful for you and your students. And now comes an opportunity for you all to hear that music again. Now there's an opportunity for you all to learn from your peers and to discuss what you learned with others. So we are going to take some time to do a breakout activity related to your Thinking Routines Toolbox exploration. So the first step, we will assign you to a breakout room, and all breakout rooms will share with their small group the tools that they explored. You can share on mic and video, or you can just share in chat. That is definitely an option. And then we're going to come back together as a whole group to share specific tools. Are there any questions, comments, concerns before we send you off to discuss? Okay. Let's see, we've got Sherry sending you all to groups. And if you have any questions, you're welcome to pop back into this main room, and I'll pop around and see if there's any other questions. Things you all found useful. Thank you. I'd like to know what thinking routines you all found useful in your breakout rooms, and maybe some of the ideas that you have for classroom implementation. So if anybody wants to turn on their mic and speak out loud, or if you want to share in chat, either is encouraged. And I can even bring up the thinking routines site if we want to use that as a reference.
I was really excited to see that they update these routines. One of the routines that I was really interested in was the Who Am I? Explore, Connect, Identify, Belong routine. And I felt like that was especially useful, especially when in the wake of everything that happened during 2020 with the riots and the protests and the pull for racial equality and inclusion and things like that. I thought that routine was very timely. I noticed it was done, I believe, in 2020. Mm-hmm. So I like that they continue to update this. So
yes, and maybe some of those links that you mentioned are having some issues. Hopefully they update those to work. But yes, it is nice to have updated and relevant routines. I think that helps. That helps learners connect to what they're experiencing, for sure.
Absolutely. And then I got a private message talking about how someone wanted to evaluate the techniques that they've designed relative to the list of core thinking routines, like the think, puzzle, explore, etc. So they're just trying to, kind of see like, okay, what am I already working with? What do they have? Are there some tweaks or things like that? So it's just, that's really amazing. Folks are using that.
Yes. And that is a great point, that teachers can adapt these routines and tweak them to really match their content, match their learners' needs, their interests, and all of that. So yes, it's always great to adapt resources and to kind of build on each other's knowledge as well. So that's great. Oh yes, and knowing the names of the routines. Mm-hmm. That's a very good point. So if you if you're really interested in this who am I thinking routine, maybe you do a Google search for other teachers, like real classroom examples, or resources in other languages. Google search can be your friend in looking for additional and supplemental resources related to these thinking routines. Any other thinking routines that were particularly interesting or notable? And yes, a lot of these are adaptable to different content areas or grade levels. I like that it's organized into different themes or thinking types. Core thinking routines. So there's going to be some of your foundational strategies, and then looking at digging deeper or perspective taking or focusing on global perspectives or synthesizing ideas. Each of those delves deeper into different areas of metacognitive thinking routines. They also have, if you're looking for a particular subject or a particular competency of reflection, and then these are different research projects that the Project Zero has implemented. But these teaching subjects do provide some additional ways to search. And so I'm glad that the whole website was helpful in finding inquiry-based learning resources. And yes, feel free also to look at their projects and resources for additional sources on if you want to explore inquiry-based learning, metacognitive reflection. A lot of these ideas and strategies really do overlap. So that's a great point. So another key point of metacognitive reflection is really thinking about reflection versus recall, or recall versus reflection. So the traditional learning model is for students to consume information in a passive way and then to recall the information either through rote memorization or some very concrete defined assessments. But when we think about reflecting on the learning process, it's really connecting our prior learning with our current learning experience, and then extending that knowledge beyond just the core curriculum, but also to other areas of our personal lives or other content areas. And so these are two particular routines that I like to highlight and that I use in sessions as well. I used to think, and now I think, is a routine for reflection, and they have it in English and Spanish. I'm hoping the link, I say that. Yes, the link works for both of them. Good. It really helps model how thinking about how and why our thinking has changed, right? That can be really challenging for educators. That can be really challenging for learners. So just having that prompt of I used to and now I really speaks to the learning journey and really speaks to that growth mindset of how learning has impacted you and changed you. And then connect, extend, and the challenge is another routine for drawing connections between new ideas and prior knowledge. So you have to, it's encouraging and prompting students to connect to something they know about, extend, think about that growth mindset. How does this extend your knowledge? And then what is challenging or confusing? And this is listed as a routine. This talks about how is the artwork or object connected to something you know about. But you could see how this routine, like we were saying in the chat, this routine can be adapted to a variety of different subject areas or topics. It doesn't just have to be art criticism. It can be when you're introducing a new topic or when you're exploring new content areas, you could have this connect, extend, and challenge routine as well. And this one I didn't see. This one linked directly to the PDF, so I'm not sure if that one is a bilingual resource. So if you're having students engage, thank you, in these reflection activities, it's also helpful to have them document the learning process and to document that reflection. And so reflection journals are one way to have students or to help facilitate that that documentation of the learning process and the documentation of reflection. So one example or two examples of tools that you can use as reflection journals include Google Slides and Microsoft PowerPoint. Though, of course, you can use whatever tool you feel comfortable with or whatever presentation tool best meets your learners' needs or that you have access to, of course. So this on this slide, and we can link to this in the chat, there is a template, a Google Slides template for a metacognitive reflection journal. And so what this journal does, and you're welcome to copy this template and adapt it to your own tool or to adapt it to your own needs. But this includes templates or spaces for students to engage in some of the reflection thinking routines from that Project Zero library. So the I used to think, now I think, the Connect, Extend, and Challenge, the Compass Points, and Think, Puzzle, Explore. So those are the four. This has the reflection thinking routine library. And then each of these slides is an example or a blank slide for each of those routines. So that I used to think, now I think. So there's a simple text box for students to write what they used to think and what they think now. And then this one has the Connect, Extend, and Challenge space, the Compass Points. So that's going to be what I need to know, what I'm excited about learning, what my stance is, if it's something that's an opinion-based topic, and then what am I worried about or concerned about? Where are some areas that I might need some additional support? And then Think, Puzzle, and Explore. So the link that Sherry shared in the chat it is a forced copy link. So I'll demonstrate what that looks like if you need some demonstration. So if you click on that link, it does say, would you like to make a copy of this journal? And when you make a copy, you're able then to change any of, if you want to use different thinking routines, or perhaps you're having students do I used to think, now I think once a week, you can copy, duplicate this slide, and then you could have 4 or 5 or 6 or 10 of these, so that students then go in, and you could even add a text box that says something like week 1, week 2, and so on. And then you're building a template for your students, and then you can have them copy and then they're filling in their documentation of the learning process. And Rita made a point in the chat too about the importance of documentation, because it does normalize that learning is ongoing, and it does make it clear that the expectations are we continually reflect on the learning process. So we're always evolving, we're always growing, we're always thinking about learning. And then having this space does allow students an opportunity to document. And then that helps them reflect too in a summative way when they're done with a project or a unit. Now, the simple template is set up for just text boxes, so written reflection, but you can also use Google Slides or Microsoft PowerPoint or whatever presentation tool you want to use to, you can integrate other tools to create a multimedia reflection journal. So not just that written response, but you can also add in other ways to other places or artifacts of learning and reflection. So on this slide are examples, are links to example tools that you can use. So Mote is just one example of a tool. It's a Google add-on where you can add audio comments and feedbacks to a slide. So if you prefer to give audio feedback, or if students prefer to reflect with audio, they can use a tool like Mote or another tool that you might prefer to add audio comments and feedback. And then Record to Slides is another Google add-on that allows you to record videos and add them directly into slides as well. So that adds in that audio element and that visual element. I also mentioned earlier screencasting, so tools like Loom or Screencastify, those are other browser-based programs that allow you to record your screen and add a webcam as well. So students can, if they're writing an essay, they can talk about their essay, or if they have a picture of something that they created, they can talk about and reflect on what it was like to make that creation. So those are just a few examples of tools. Some alternative tools for reflection journals. You can use something like Book Creator, which is an ebook tool that allows you to create multimedia ebooks, either as an individual or as a small group or a class. Flipgrid is a video-based discussion board that would allow for video-based reflection, either individual or individuals communicating with peers, or even the whole class, sort of a community reflection space as well. And then Google Forms or Microsoft Forms, that's another place to generate student reflection. So maybe you have a form that you create, and you're asking students some of those thinking routines, like that I used to think, now I think. And if you ask them that in a form, in a Google form or Microsoft form or whatever form creating tool you're using, then that provides you as the teacher a documentation of all of your students' reflections. So you're encouraging them to reflect, and then you as the teacher have that data to then inform your instruction. So those forms or having students submit forms can be another powerful way to document student reflection. And now I'd like to hear from you all. Thank you, Sherry, for sharing those links in the chat to some of the example tools. If you're interested in exploring any of those tools in particular, and I know a lot of you said that you are already doing a lot of reflection in your classroom and you're already facilitating student reflection in the learning process. So I am interested to know what tools you use. You can either come on mic or share in the chat as well. Whether it's one of the tools I mentioned or a totally different tool. I have to try out Parlay. It does sound like a really interesting tool.
I'm such a proponent of Parlay. Yeah, it's just great. Like, even as students are discussing and everything, but I think it helps them like think about what they're going to say, and they get to reflect and see how other folks perceive what they're saying and see what they think about other folks' ideas. I think it's a really cool thing. But another thing about this, the thinking routines that really got me thinking, Caitlin, is, especially if you teach middle school or something like that, where students start to question, like, why are we doing this? I think the power of these thinking routines is that you can tell students, well, this helps us consolidate our learning. This is like a way that you can control the situation, and it helps your brain work better and pack things together better and understand things better. And then they now know they have the power to do that wherever they go, So I think that's the cool thing about these routines.
Absolutely. Yes, Padlet is another great tool for student reflection. So Padlet is a bulletin board style. It's a website that you can allow students to add content to kind of in a sticky note format. And then you as a teacher can set it up in a variety of different visual ways, and you can link to images and videos and multimedia sources as well. Now I see a mention of Schoology, and I'm interested to know how Schoology, or if you all have, discussions. Yes, that's what I was thinking is, and maybe you have other ways that you use Schoology as well, but Schoology or whatever learning management system your school or district uses, lots of learning management systems have discussion forums or a discussion tool that allows for some of that interactive reflection where students are reflecting as a whole class. And Google Sites is another a website creation tool Wakelet is visual bookmarking, Adobe Spark, that's sort of that digital multimedia presentation. I am not familiar with Mural either. That's a new one to me. So I'm interested in checking that one out. See if we can find it. It's a collaboration whiteboard. And that Jamboard is one that I use quite frequently as a Google user. Jamboard is a digital collaboration space through Google. So if you are a school that has Google Workspace, it does kind of integrate with all of those other accounts and tools. Mural.co. Yes, thank you for sharing the link out. New things to explore over the summer. Always looking for new tools. Well, thank you for those of you that shared in the chat. Feel free to, yes, feel free to add more to the chat as well. Sherry, is the chat posted with the recording? Do you know?
No, it's not. The chat is like one of the best parts of the sessions. I would agree.
It is, and I wonder, if we can do some sort of crowdsourcing document. And I think we have a Padlet plan for some other sessions, but so some of you save the chat and put it into your notes as well. And yes, you can do that. If you're in the chat, there's a 3 little dots and there's an option to click save chat.
Yeah, the chat has so many rich resources. Like, I definitely have to save it.
I guess that's a benefit of coming to the live session, right? You're able to save that chat and have those links to explore. The links are also all in the presentation too. So if you registered, they'll be shared out that way. Or at least the tools that I presented are linked in the presentation. Yeah, the chat is just going to have to be something that you save if you want to. Yes, Google Docs is not on the list, and that is an oversight, because I think that's something that is just such a big part of my daily routine that maybe I overlooked it as one to mention, but thank you for pointing that out. Yes, Google Docs is another great tool for reflection, and the commenting and suggesting features and the version history are really great tools or features that allow for peer-to-peer feedback and collaboration, and allow for teachers to monitor students and provide guidance. And if you're a Microsoft school, Microsoft Word has some of those features as well, particularly the online version allows for some of that real-time collaboration. And Rita makes a good point too. Any tool that you're already using, you can likely adapt to many of these routines. So you just have to think about which routine you want to use, and then what's the way that you can adapt it to whatever tool it is that you're using. So yes, and I know we mentioned a lot of tools in the presentation and in the chat. Don't feel like you have to try them all. Pick one if you want to and explore, and try not to overwhelm with tools. Really think about the purpose and meaning behind the tool, and what your comfort level and your students' comfort level is. So we're coming toward the end of our hour together. I'd like in the chat for you all to write a headline that describes something you learned today. So this is an example of one of the thinking routines. And this is a great way to encourage students to summarize their learning experience. So write a headline that describes what you learned today. I like that. It's anything but routine. Thinking routines are anything but routine. Thinking deeper. Documenting your learning process. I'm having trouble thinking of one. Live thinking makes real-time learner impacts. Innovative ways to think about thinking. Oh, you like that, that's a good problem to have though. Learning too much for a headline. That means that there's lots that you learned and took away. And I'm glad you like the right sidebar. That is a great way to sort of help pace content, inspire collaboration. Great. Thank you. Yes, a great metacognitive feature. So there's metacognitive features that can help guide students' thinking and attention, even as you are presenting content and engaging with content as well. So we only have a few minutes left. I do want to point out, if you can please fill out the survey for this session to both log your attendance and provide feedback to guide future sessions as well. If you requested when you registered, you will receive a certificate of completion via email. So we'll share that survey in the chat. Thank you, Sherry. And then I do also want to point out or share about our upcoming workshops in the Summer of Powerful Learning series. So next week, we'll be talking about empowering students to use video and audio for learning. So looking at some of those more, looking a little bit more deeply into some of those audio and visual tools, adapting social emotional learning for multicultural context, creating rubrics, and evaluating tech tools. So we talked about a lot of different tech tools today. If you're interested in thinking about, well, which is the right tool for me, or how do I know if a tool is going to be meaningful and purposeful, you can attend that session. And then there's also one on using the New York Times Learning Network activities that just was added recently. So Sherry shared in the chat the Summer of Powerful Learning link, which has descriptions for each of those sessions, times, information about registering, and also has links to YouTube recordings of past sessions as well. And all of the session decks and recordings will be sent out in email if you registered. So thank you all for attending and participating today. It was great to learn with you, and hopefully you all found some valuable resources for engaging in metacognitive reflection with your students.